This is Adam MainMan Carey here. Hype is Wrestling Radio. I just can't sit through the whole theme song, the whole theme music. It goes on and on. So, Ronnie, Kid Hollywood, you there, sir?
Yeah, I'm here.
Yeah, I'm trying to get a shortened down version of our opening theme because I hate people to sit there for 2 minutes and 32 seconds as we open up the show. But I love the Midnight Express theme to open us up, so I'll figure something else out with that. I tried last time where we would actually talk over it coming into the show, but it drowned us out a little bit, so I'll figure something else out. But again, this is Hype is Wrestling Radio. I am Adam, MainMan Carey. This is Ronnie, Kid Hollywood, Stanley. Again, we will be taking your calls, and we have 30 minutes before Dr. Tom Prichard joins us today. 646-200-0999. If anybody wants to throw out any topics, throw out any thoughts, before we get Dr. Tom on here. How are you doing today, sir?
Well, I was doing pretty good until I did not hear the Back to the Future theme coming for my intro. I'm not very happy about it. I'm displeased.
So now I hear now. So now I hear it to be you want an intro now. You want intro music to our show because I figure we all come on, boom, we hit the Midnight Extreme gimmick, we come on, we do the show. But now you want a separate intro now. Is that what it is?
Yes, and I also want you to set up my own soundproof studio with an espresso machine and a redhead with, some large assets.
Well, Gary Carp, he talks a lot, but I can get him on the phone here. You're replaceable, sir. It would legitimately, Dr. Tom would hang up on us probably within the first 20 minutes. But I can get the host of Hypus here on the line, and I'm not getting you an espresso machine. What I will do, though, is the next show we do, I will make sure, as I bring you on, I will give you your Back to the Future intro. How does that sound?
That is very negotiable. Thank you very much, sir. Adam, I am doing phenomenal, sir. How are you?
Okay, now shoot, we're talking now. Okay, I'm doing great. First things first, I want to welcome everybody who's listening to us via the Stitcher app. As I announced yesterday on our first show, there are 2 shows on the Hype brand. Hype is Here Radio, which is more of a current event / topical comedy type thing that I do with my other host, Gary Carp. This is Hype is Wrestling. This is something a lot of people requested from our time in the business to talk about the business because we have some different viewpoints. People are listening via the Stitcher app, which is an application that lets people listen worldwide through their cars, through their phones, through their computers, and also through Blog Talk Radio. So thank you very much for listening. If you're listening to us for the first time, picked a great night to listen, folks. A guy that I admire, a guy that I admire for a lot of reasons, not only for what he's accomplished in the business, behind the scenes, out in front, but for a guy that says whatever he feels. Dr. Tom Prichard tonight. It's going to be a great interview, sir.
Oh, yeah, I can't wait. The more I read about this guy, the more I like him. He is just a phenomenal person. And, I got to mark out here, and just to make the show complete, I viewed a video of him wrestling Bret Hart earlier, which I have to say was phenomenal.
Yes, that video was originally on hypeisradio.com, so check it out. I've updated the website with a different video now. Anytime you watch Dr. Tom Prichard wrestle, you knew you were in for a great match. His wrestling style was unique. I put that match up there originally because I admired it, and also it was a Bret Hart match, and you're a huge Bret Hart fan.
Yes, sir, and I got to say, we'll definitely talk about this more in the interview, but yes, just his wrestling style alone, this guy was, we'll get into that when he calls in. I can't wait to speak with him.
Yeah, he had a style of his own. He admittedly did a lot of things based upon guys he admired in the business, which there's nothing wrong with that. I think there's this aura in the wrestling business that you're not allowed to, quote-unquote, copy another guy. I think as long as you put your own spin on things, it's more of a tribute than anything. He openly took his promo style from Roddy Piper, and he told him that. So, if you listen to any of his promos, it sounds just like Roddy Piper. But I don't find anything wrong with that.
Oh, no, not at all. And really, if you think about it, wrestling's been around for, up teen years. It's kind of hard to get in there and do something that no one else has done yet.
Jim Cornette said it best, that if it's 7 years old, it's new again in the wrestling business. So somebody
that is a great quote.
Yes, it is, and it's very true. I can tell you, somebody who's worked the independents for a long time, I've legitimately seen guys come in there dressed as their favorite wrestler before they ever head out to the audience. Now, if you come in the locker room dressed as I don't know, Triple H. Let's say you're wearing Triple H's T-shirt and you're wearing maybe a bandana of his or whatever it is. What does that tell you about that person who's going to be out in the ring here soon?
Well, in wrestling terms, that tells me he's a mark like me.
Mm-hmm. Well, I know you're not a mark. You see, you're not a mark. You're a fan, and we all start out as fans in this business. We start out as fans because we see something on TV that we enjoy, and we still watch because we enjoy. Where from becoming a mark, as we call them, to a fan, or a fan to a mark, vice versa, to an actual professional wrestler, that's where some people think they can make that transition because they are a fan. And I think you got in the wrestling business mainly because you were a fan also, but also the fact that you just, can I use the word obsessed with the business at one point, or you just had to get in on it? What got you in the wrestling business?
Actually, I'm not even going to lie to you, brother. When I first got into the wrestling business, I got into it because I said, this stuff is fake and anyone can do it.
Wow, that's pretty bold. Now, how far into training did you realize this shit's real, run for my life?
About 15 seconds.
Yeah, it's there's a video that Ray Lloyd posted today. I'll try to share it on the Hype is Here, Hype is Wrestling Facebook page. It's Bob Roop back in the old Florida territory. I take it guys back in the day, and I've heard stories of this, guys back in the day would show up and say, hey, this wrestling thing, I can do it. And they would show up, and they would have guys like Bob Roop go in there and legitimately whip their ass. I mean, stretch them out to the point where it just was not funny. And I don't remember this video airing on WWE Classics on Demand, but it did, obviously. It was on that Legends series, the Legends Roundtable. And it is just Bob Roop stretching this guy to the point I think he actually gets out of the ring and cries. It's actually rather humiliating for him.
Yeah, I think at one point, a good buddy of ours, Wade Daniels, one of my trainers, he was putting me in the abdominal stretch. And let me tell you something, man. There's no faking that thing. That thing hurts. I don't care who you are. And my first day of training, I legitimately knocked myself out. And it's embarrassing to say because nobody helped. I knocked myself out.
Really? How did you do that? Was this because I can guess how you did that, but I'm guessing it was due to a bump. I'm taking it was due to a bump, but tell me how.
Oh yeah. Yeah, well, you're absolutely right. I took a bump, and I did not tuck my chin. So word to the wise out there, guys. When your trainer says tuck your chin, do it.
The best trick in the book I was ever taught is whenever you're learning how to bump, carry a wallet with you at all times. Put it under your chin when you're bumping because it will save you from stuff like that. So that sounds about right, sir. And I would imagine Dr. Tom has a few stories about that because Dr. Tom was the head of the WWE Developmental. He was the head coach there for 6 years, I believe. But even before that, he was a part of the WWE Developmental going all the way back to 1996. And he had a hand in training guys. And a lot of people don't really think of Dr. Tom Prichard as a guy that worked with certain individuals in developmental when you really think like guys like Edge, guys like even Dolph Ziggler, for example. And I'm sure that'll come up. But Kurt Angle, The Rock, and Dr. Tom Prichard will not take full credit out there for completely training The Rock. But knowing what I know about Dr. Tom, and I've been a fan of his ever since the Smoky Mountain days, I would guess that there's a lot of Dr. Tom Prichard that goes into The Rock because not only did when The Rock started, he came from USWA, which was obviously a Memphis territory area, and I believe, if I'm not mistaken, Smoky Mountain Wrestling, that area, I would imagine Dr. Tom was around that area as well helping him. So just my guess.
Oh yeah. Oh man, you can even see it some with aside from talking about himself in the third person, the cockiness in the ring and stuff. Wow, that's a whole other subject, and I can't wait till he calls in. That's going to be awesome. I did want to share one more story about my training though with Ghetto Superstar. This guy had me in there, running the rope and doing pancakes with another guy. He said do it 30 times, and I think like 3 times in there, 3 reps in, I was like blacking out. Cardio, you know what I'm saying? But, no, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, if you've never actually been with these guys that we're talking about, since we are a worldwide show. These guys are based out of Florida, North Florida. And, you know, they're independent guys, but they travel the roads. They've been around. And they do it the right way. And professional wrestling training nowadays, Dr. Tom talks about it a lot, how anybody can have a ring. Anybody can really start the wrestling business, but doing it the right way is a whole different ballgame. You can do whatever you want in your backyard, but when you go out there and make money, that's a whole different story.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. You know, between Wade Daniels and Ghetto Superstar, they each have, like, 20 years experience in their own, and they both taken some pretty wicked bumps. I know I've had the crap beaten out of me by both of them, and, I mean, you know, it's just, hey, well, it's one of those things. They call it a contact sport. My trainers do. A lot of people call it fake. All I say is, hey, come meet me at the ring for training, and then we'll talk fake. But, you know, it is what it is.
I want to transition real quick here and talk about the Jerry Lawler situation. Obviously, I was sitting at home Monday night, and I was live tweeting the show on Hype Is Radio on Twitter. So follow me, Hype Is Radio on Twitter. And I was live tweeting the show, and I'm watching a match between Daniel Bryan and Kane against the Primetime Players. Well, 7 minutes into the match, it goes silent. And anytime something goes silent, because WWE preaches keep the audience and keep something going on. And so if I hear silence on commentary and I see the crowd start standing up, I know something's wrong. And I you know, at first, you heard the noises come over the microphone. If you watch the situation, you hear Jerry Lawler, and I didn't know it was him at this point, but I think I actually sent out a tweet or something of it that said, I had no idea this one. I said, did Jerry Lawler fall asleep to this match or something, because you hear wheezing and you hear Jerry Lawler snoring. And it just, then I didn't see it the first time, but the camera pans over and you see Jerry Lawler collapsed over. And obviously the cameras didn't catch what happened over there, but Michael Cole puts the mics on mute. He calls over the doctor. The doctor checks on him, realizes there's a problem. And we get security who carries him through the audience to the staging area where they had a stretcher there. And just an awful scene. I saw a tweet from, I want to say it was Smith Hart, who sent it out, saying that he had a friend there at the show who said that they say that Jerry Lawler was clinically dead for 20 minutes. How scary is that?
Oh, yeah, that's really awful. And, I hope that everything turns out well. Last I heard, he was in, what was it, serious but stable condition or something, critical but stable.
They're staying stable now. Everything they're saying is stable. They're saying that everything that's going on with him at this point is positive. The brain scans came back. There's no brain damage, which anytime you go 20 minutes without blood to your head, that's the number one cause when you have a heart attack, is brain damage. Thank God in this case it looks like there was no brain damage, but he's still not out of the woods. So it's just scary, man, because, you see a guy 20 minutes before who's, albeit 62, I believe, in the ring, and he's having the time of his life. But then 20 minutes later, he's just sitting there, and he almost drops dead of a heart attack. And if he would not have been at the WWE arena, he probably would be dead right now. It's just a scary thing to think about.
Yeah, absolutely. I heard about it. Now, there again, Raw's sitting on my DVR right now. I'm hoping to watch it tomorrow. I've just been really busy. But he had a tag match, wasn't it Orton and no, it wasn't Orton.
No, it was
God,
it was hold on. It was him and Orton against Cena.
CM Punk, was it?
No, it was him and Orton against CM Punk, and hell, I don't know. Hold on. Somebody, listeners, tell me. Yeah, I see that. God. He had a tag.
Well,
it was him and
it's on my DVR, but I don't think I can go and fast forward it right now.
I got it. It was him and Orton against Ziggler and CM Punk. So that's what was going on. So, yeah. Wait a second. Somebody just sent me something here, and I just noticed it. I'm sorry. That just kind of threw me off guard. We will make that announcement towards the end of the show there, buddy. It looks like our schedule just got changed. So I love the independent wrestling scene. I really do. I do, because when I book my schedules, what little shows I do work, I book for 2 shows right now, and yeah, okay. I might as well get the monkey out of the room. We usually plug shows like this towards the end of the show. If you're in the North Florida area, come out and see USWA. They're going to have a show that was supposed to be September 29th. Now it has been changed to Friday night, September 28th. And we're just now hearing about it for the first time, and I guess the owner's trying to get the word out. So if you're listening, Jesus, what?
I was going to say, I apologize. I should have called you earlier, but I heard about that about 2 o'clock this afternoon. I got an email. So.
Yeah. Well, that's me running. I did not get the email. So, okay. Well, I'm just hearing about this for the first time. I just got an email saying I should make this announcement. So, with that being said, for everybody that was looking to attend USWA on the 28th here in Florida, it's a huge show. Cody Hall, which Scott Hall's son, will be on the card. Glacier, just a lot of big names. Too many names to name. That'll be the Friday the 28th. But back to Lawler. Anyhow, Lawler's in stable condition. He's got a long ways to go. I'm actually seeing the updates from his girlfriend, which, by the way, his girlfriend is like 28 years old. I mean, I want to be the king. I want to be the king.
Wow.
Yeah, have you seen her? Man, she's gorgeous.
No, I have not. I didn't hear about that. That's interesting. Hey, way to go, though, man. Congratulations, brother.
Hey, Jerry's always had a thing for younger women, and God knows if I was in his position, I would be right there with him. I do not blame him one bit. I wish the king the best. I'm a huge Jerry Lawler fan. I've always been a huge Jerry Lawler fan, and I just, trust me, he's one of those guys that you look at and think about what he's accomplished for mainstream wrestling. He was mainstream before wrestling was mainstream, so absolutely.
Oh, yeah.
I think he's just one of those guys that you just wanna watch do what he does. But nonetheless, thoughts and prayers out to him.
Yeah, absolutely. I remember. Well, of course, I couldn't experience it live because I wasn't born until '83. But I remember when him and Andy Kaufman did their little stint and went to, what was it, Letterman or something, or Jay Leno or something, whatever. And
yeah, it was Letterman.
Went and wrestled, and yeah, that was interesting. That kind of helped get wrestling mainstream, working with Andy.
Oh, yeah, that's what I mean by mainstream, absolutely. And that's bringing Andy Kaufman in as a comedian. I do comedy as well, and as much as I have respect for comedy and comedians and whatnot, for Andy Kaufman was one of the best. But for him to mix with my other love, which is professional wrestling, that's something that you just don't see anymore. And if you see it, it's not like it was. Andy Kaufman knew what kayfabe was. He knew exactly what to do in front of an audience. So Andy Kaufman, to the day he died. And I can tell you one thing. I know Tom Prichard has some stories about, whenever he comes on, he has some stories about Jerry Lawler, and I want to ask him about the time he had Jerry Lawler tell the story and admit that the Andy Kaufman situation was a work. That's what I want to talk to him about. So remind me on that one. That's the story. Those are road stories you want to hear. So I know that happened on the road. So, by the way, I want to go ahead and plug something else while we're at it, because Tom Prichard has a book out. Dr. Tom Prichard does a book that any person that's in the business right now, if you're in the business or you want to get into business, this is a book I recommend to anybody. It hasn't been out for long, so if you don't have it, don't worry. It's just came out. It's out in paperback, so you can get it too. It's called A Pro Wrestling Curriculum, Advice, Suggestions, and Stories to Help the Aspiring Pro Get to the Next Level. Let me tell you something, folks. For a guy who has trained some of the best and who has been around the business as long as he has, we're talking 30 years at least. He had his first match at 79. So put that in perspective. He was there with Gordon Soley in Continental Wrestling. This book gives you a years-long advice how to get to the next level. It couldn't be laid out any simpler for you. So, I
can't wait to get my hands on my copy.
Yes. So give that one a look. That's something you can find it on Amazon. I will post the link on our Facebook page and also on the website, hypeisradio.com. Again, we're expecting Dr. Tom Prichard to be calling in here shortly, probably within the next few minutes. So stick around, folks. We will have him here in just a few short minutes. I want to talk about real quick before he does come on the line, this CM Punk Paul Heyman situation. You have not seen Raw yet, but I'm going to tell you, they did a brilliant angle this week where, again, this match was same match, actually. It was Punk and Orton. Punk and Ziggler against Orton and Lawler. And Paul Heyman walks down the ringside. Punk jumps off the apron. They just start talking about restaurants in Montreal, about flight information, and completely no-sell the match. And Ziggler loses the match, and then they walk out. It's brilliant. I don't know where they're headed with it, but if it means seeing more of Paul Heyman, I'm all for it.
Yeah, that was the one part of Raw I've actually caught. I didn't see the whole match, but I did see Heyman and Punk out there on the outside talking and just, shooting the breeze while I think it was Ziggler was in there getting his butt whooped. But that was interesting. I kind of like how they're putting that together. And I'm with you. I don't know where it's headed, but I guess this is where the hook is. I can't wait to find out.
That's all you could really ask for. Is to want to watch the next week. In this day and age, I posted a video earlier of Dr. Tom working an angle. Back in '88 with the Dirty White Boy, I'd like for him to talk about it a little bit. You don't see angles that really grab you and make you think about what's going on. Sometimes less is more in the wrestling business, I believe. Like something like Paul Heyman walking out talking to CM Punk. They go to the back. They try to interview Heyman. Heyman just stares at him. As if I'm not supposed to, like, for example, I think the question was, what's your affiliation with CM Punk? Heyman just looks at him. Punk takes the mic and just says, I'm a Paul Heyman guy. And they walk away. And that's that. So now I'm going to tune in next week to find out what happens next. This could be the kind of push that CM Punk's been looking for, what I call the old Stone Cold Steve Austin push.
You bet, and I'm trying to stay away from my crutch absolutely here on this. But
I hear you the whole show. I've heard you the whole show. I didn't want to say anything because I didn't want to call it out to everybody because once you call it out, it's out there. But I can hear you go, like you're saying things like, oh, yeah, like that there. I hear you doing that. But then you go, oh, yeah, absolutely. Like it's almost like biting a fingernail till it's raw and then squeezing it until it hurts. You're doing that, and I understand what you're doing. Trust me, I hear you doing it. But I'm not gonna, not give you too much crap on that.
That's okay. It's between me and you. Nobody else knows. Anyway,
of course.
It's what I like there. But one thing I do want to kind of say though is it's easy to do those kind of little, the less is more deal with, hey, I'm a Heyman man and walk away because it's going to be on again next Monday. With most indie shows, they'll run every month or every other month. And so you got to leave a little more of a hanger there or at least have it going on the net so people can see what's going on.
I disagree with that.
Keep up with, yeah.
I disagree with that. I know I disagree with that, and I'm going to argue here a little bit with you because, hey, we got 4 minutes.
No.
Yeah, well. Hey, at least I'm not, like, for example, when me and Gary were doing the show the other day, Gary was talking so much to where I actually you were listening to the show on hold. I actually went and talked to you instead. So just keep in mind.
I was laughing so hard through the whole thing, bro. I'm sorry. But y'all were really going at it.
Yeah, well, it was a political show, and Gary gets so entrenched into what he's doing. I love him to death, don't get me wrong. He's wonderful at this. I could listen back to our shows and legitimately laugh, but, Gary gets so in-depth into things. Like, at the beginning of the show, I started out by saying, hey, how you doing? And he said something along the lines of, I want to say, God bless people at 9/11, blah, blah, blah. And I'm kind of like, yeah, because I'm waiting for that, tag it, because I would like to show I'm a human being, too, and give my condolences to the people. And I know it's a hard day for people on 9/11, but then they say Gary goes from 9/11 talk to plugging his Broadway show, and I'm like, wait a minute, what? I exist here, Gary. I actually said, hey, Gary, I'm a human being. I'm on this show too, remember? And it just made no sense. Like, legitimately, like, he's like, so yeah, and I want to wish everybody of the victims of 9/11 and their families a heartfelt day, and make sure you do come out this Monday. I'll be appearing on Broadway. I'm like, or off Broadway. I'm like, what? Wait a minute, is it? I'm sitting here watching the train leave in the distance, and I'm just standing there, like, I have my ticket. I just need the conductor to hand it to. Like, we really did go at it, and at one point, we both gave up. I don't know if you heard this part, but
yes, I did, in fact, hear that part, and I really wanted to come on and speak my piece, but I'm not going to lie, I kind of disagreed with both of you at points, and I just didn't want to start a whole new set of controversy.
We went a little over on that show. We could have went probably another 45 minutes, but I kind of wish you would at one point because it would at least shut him up for a moment. I love you to death, Gary, but we both talk a lot. I understand that, but it's like when you're doing a political show, you got to have guidelines where the other person is allowed to respond and retort to your situation. So I don't know what I was going to argue with you now, so you won that battle. Oh, no, the indie thing, that's right. If you do
actually, before you go there, I'm going to try to get you to forget one more time. I would like to tell you, the mixing of passions. You're talking about Andy Kaufman, the wrestling and comedian thing. And then you mentioned something about 1988, and it kind of clicked in my head. My passions, I would like to see Bret Hart be the Doc, The Rock be Marty McFly, and have like a brand new Mustang Cobra as a DeLorean.
Okay. I'm not going to forget it over that. I'd love to sit and just talk about it to the future, but I'm not going to forget it. I'm going to get back on track because this is Hyper's Wrestling. I think that if you did an angle, like, for example, the angle we were going to do in CWA, where you start something at a show and you mention it elsewhere, and then you bring that angle back. I mean, let's say you're running shows on an independent level each month, and you're able to take that angle and leave the cliffhanger there, people aren't, I mean, unless people are goldfish, they're not going to forget that quick. I mean, I would imagine those angles are what make people come back. Am I right?
Well, yeah, absolutely. And on the particular angle you're speaking of, there was a lot of controversy there anyway. There was a lot of hooks and a lot of people chomping at the bit to, well, tear your head off, quite frankly.
Yeah.
But
I mean, you take an angle with that kind of heat, though, and you run a show each month. Wouldn't there be enough heat there to keep? If you run a high heat angle, your main event angle, and leave a cliffhanger, such as, what will happen next week / month, isn't there enough heat there to keep people interested, and how long can you go? Like, I think the independents, where back in the days of the WWF in the late 80s, you would run a title feud for a year, I think you can do that on the independents nowadays.
Oh, and I agree with that, absolutely. There was a lot of, like, that particular thing, we wound up going on another unexpected hiatus. A lot of stuff kind of happened with CWA that had to put off shows for a while. And then whatever other stuff going on behind closed doors. But, and I agree, it could have even been reignited and taken care of. And you're absolutely right. When that hook is set like that, you can definitely bring people back around next month and have them come to see what in the world's going to happen to X guy versus V guy,
Oh, absolutely. There I am. I said it, absolutely. I think that you have to condition your audience for what they want to see. We are as a society, we are too quick, I think, to jump the gun and think that everybody wants to see more all of a sudden. They got to see everything at one time. And with wrestling nowadays, I think that I honestly think that wrestling has now got to the point that we now believe that more is better, and I disagree with that theory. I think that theory is, watch my language, hogwash. Yeah.
And I agree with you. I agree with you, and you're making some very valid points, and that's the way it should be done. Unfortunately, you have guys like me that are instant gratification type of guys, okay? I wanted Back to the Future 3 on DVD the other day because I have, like, multiple copies of each movie, and I didn't want to wait for it to come in via the net, so I went over to Movie Stop. It's just one of those things. I don't like having to wait till next month to see what's going on, but obviously, if it's something I'm extremely interested in, I'm going to do it. And, hey, next month you're going to get my money again. So you're absolutely right.
Not to interrupt you, but we have our guest on the line. Ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Tom Prichard is on Hype is Wrestling. Dr. Tom, it's good to have you on, sir. Dr. Tom, are you there, sir? Dr. Tom disconnected. Well, that was fair enough. Okay. Well, that was a hell of a
Back to the Future thing, wasn't it?
Well, he heard you rambling on and on about Back to the Future, and I guess decided he called in the wrong show. Since we're talking
I'm sorry.
Right.
I'm sorry, Dr. Tom. Please call back.
Yes, I don't know what happened there. We're trying to get Dr. Tom back on the line there. But anywho, as we wait for Dr. Tom to come back on the line, I will say this. I think indie wrestling's in trouble, man. It really is. And for every good organization, there's 10 crap organizations. Not naming any names, but it is what it is. And I believe we got Dr. Tom back here, so let me try to bring him on. Dr. Tom, I am Adam MainMan Carey. This is Ronnie with Stanley. You're on Hype is Wrestling, sir. How are you doing, sir?
I'm doing great. I thought you guys got mad because of something I didn't say and already cut me off. Wow. Everything good?
Oh, we're good now. I don't know what happened. We got disconnected there somehow or another, but everything's good, sir. Glad to have you on. Again, my name's Adam Carey. This is Ronnie Stanley, my co-host here. A little background about us before we start with the interview. I've been in the business, independent business, for about 14 years. Ronnie's been for 4 years, and we're just happy to have you on today, sir.
Well, I'm happy to be on. Where do you guys work at?
Well,
where did you guys wrestle at? What independent shows? What part of the country? How about that?
Northeast Florida, sir. I originally, mainly Continental Championship Wrestling here in Northeast Florida, CWA, USWA, mainly Jacksonville area, pretty much.
Gotcha.
I think Ronnie can go the same way.
Outstanding.
Yes, sir. I also wrestle in kind of the central Georgia area. I have a few places up there. Haven't been doing it quite as much lately, but it looks like things are fixing to fire back up. But I have a lot of fun traveling, and I got to say it's thanks to guys like you that kind of paved the roads for us to be able to get out there and do this.
Well, thank you very much. I wish we could have paved the road a little better for you and made it a lot better. But I'm going to go on record and saying we did the best we could. So there you have it.
Absolutely. And one thing I wanted to talk about with you real quick here. One thing that stood out to me about your career is you got your start. You had your first match in my hometown of Bryan College Station, which is phenomenal. Tell me how you started the business and what exactly got you into professional wrestling.
Man, this is all I ever wanted to do, so I think you guys can probably relate to that, especially if you're on the independent wrestling scene right now. It's so. I've got to say this: if you've read any of my blogs, you know how I feel about play wrestlers. And what I mean by play wrestlers are the guys that go out there and pretend that there's something they're not, and that's one of the things that I think has really hurt the business, especially in East Tennessee. Somewhat in Florida, but I haven't been to that many shows in Florida. But I've seen it in East Tennessee in the middle of Wadesboro, North Carolina, which is pretty much Tennessee anyway. And I've always wanted to be a wrestler, and I just, when I started back in the old days, there was always independent wrestling, I guess, or we called them outlaws back then. But I grew up in West Texas until I was 10, then moved to Houston, and started training with the Iron Sheik. I actually started working in the office with Paul Bosch during the summers of high school, which is a long story in itself. I went to the matches every Friday night and eventually just worked my way up into being Paul's assistant on a Friday night, working in the office during the summers and working in the office when I graduated, and then going to the Coliseum on Friday afternoons with the Iron Sheik, who at that time was wrestling as Muhammad Farouk. There was a football player, I don't even remember his name because he lasted 2 weeks, and Sheik used to stretch both of us every Friday afternoon, come in with Gary Hart when Gary would come in for the booking meetings, and eventually the Sheik had to leave the territory, and Nick Kozak and Joe Mercer had a record service and a ring set up in Houston. So with Paul's blessing, I went over there, and a guy by the name of King Parsons was also starting out. And King would drive his dump truck every night to practice in this record service, just in a greasy, dirty, filthy garage. But I loved it. We had a ring, and we would work out and have a great time. Then Joe was going to run a show in Bryan, Texas. It is Bryan, Texas. College Station, right? That's it? Yes. And Ernie Shavers, I believe, I was just looking at I'm putting a book together, so I was looking at the pictures the other day, my first match. Ernie Shavers was on the card, main event. I don't remember who he was going to wrestle, but I just remember he was in the main event. And I took pictures with him before the matches, him and Mike the Biggin. Don't know if you remember him or not. But anyway, had this my first match in Bryan, Texas against El Satanico, not just Satanico, El Satanico number 2.
El Satanico.
Yeah, you have to differentiate there because he drove one of Nick and Joe's records. So as soon as he got off work, he came and put the mask on and pretty much beat the living crap out of me that night. But that's how that came about. Joe was an independent show, and with Paul Bosch's blessing, he let me do it. Nick Kozak was a part of it, who was a regular for Paul and a referee. I think Nick had graduated or retired and started being a referee for Paul in Houston. So that was how that came about, and I think I made $18 that night. I remember the payoff. I didn't care about it. I just remember it. And so, couldn't be an even 20. It had to be 18. And that was it. So from there it started. I got some TV shots around Louisiana, Arkansas, Oklahoma, and away I went. And again, I have a lot of stuff that I'm trying to put together for this book. Mm-hmm. I'm trying to get all these stories straight because the path that led me to where I am now was definitely a twisted, turning one at that.
Well, I'm glad to see pay has not increased since the days of old because, trust me, independent wrestling is still paying the same $18 if you work around here. So it's definitely hasn't changed much. Let me ask you this. But back in the days, I read here where you actually, at 12 years old, were actually taking pictures at ringside for a Japanese magazine, which is astonishing because I got started when I was 16. You were doing everything for Paul Bosch. You were doing anything you could, and I think that's a lost art. Guys do not want to do the small task to get in the wrestling business anymore.
No, and I think the difference, first of all, we have to look at the difference in the era and the time because, once again, I was so fortunate, and I didn't realize how fortunate I actually was until I got in the business to understand that Paul Bosch would bring in the top wrestling stars all over the country. And when I lived in El Paso, Texas at the time, I grew up in the 60s, and the Funks were the kings in El Paso. And in 1969, Dory Funk Jr. won the NWA championship when the NWA meant something. So, I was seeing all these great wrestlers, and I just figured that it was that way all over the country, all over the world, every place you went to. So when I got to Houston, we moved to Houston and found this promotion. My brother Ken is actually the guy who picked me up after school. I was trying any way I could to get into the business, get up close, and I started writing, doing articles, and figured out, listen, man, if you send me these press passes, I'll see if I can get ringside for Paul Bosch. Well, Wrestling News sent me a press pass, and Gong Magazine sent me something. I don't remember if it was a letter or whatever it may be. Koichi Yashizawa, who was a famous photographer in the 70s and 80s, maybe even. Anyway, so my brother Ken is the one who set up that meeting with Paul at his office, and I was in awe because I was 12 years old. I'll never forget that day. I was walking home from school, and Ken stopped in the car and said, "Get in." I said, "Where are we going?" He said, "Just get in and shut up." And then he told me, "I'm going to take you down and introduce you to Mr. Bosch and tell him what you want to do." So he did. And Paul said, "How would you like to try this Friday night?" And I said, "Oh, well, why not? It was Briscoe and Wahoo, I believe. And so I was up close with the main event at 12 years old taking these pictures and sent them into the magazine. I still have the article. I found it actually, wherever it was in the files and storage of some of the pictures I took with Jack and Wahoo and some of the other guys I took. And eventually Paul even started publishing some of my pictures in the program. So this just started from 12 and kept on to 13. He knew I wanted to be a wrestler and kept telling me I was too small. And I would do anything because I wanted to be in the wrestling business. But I think today when people watch wrestling, they think automatically WWE, and you watch it and you say, I want to be a star. They don't understand being on the independent scene and going to some of the buildings, and trust me, I've been to the independents. I've done the independents. I get it. That's why I don't want to do them. That's why, as begrudgingly as it's become, I hate the fact that there's so many guys out there doing what they're doing. Doing to the business what they're doing to the business, and the fact is that it's not necessarily their fault or anybody's fault, except for the con men who are trying to con everybody. I just think it's the way the business evolved. It's so hard to get in to the WWE, but it was hard to get in back then too. It was even harder. I think it was just one of those things that you had to learn the hard way. You had to break in. You had to know somebody, and if you didn't know somebody, you had to get to know somebody, and they had to see what kind of metal you were made of. Were you willing to put up the ring? Were you willing to work for nothing? Were you willing to do whatever it took? And not everybody's willing to do that now. Too many people are worried about being stars, and that's the problem.
Right. I completely agree. And me and Ronnie were talking about your book earlier, your last book, which I find phenomenal. I haven't finished it, but I've read a portion of it, A Pro Wrestling Curriculum Advice, Suggestions and Stories to Help the Aspiring Pro Get to the Next Level, which I think the wrestling business and aspiring wrestlers and even guys that have been in the business for a long while, because as you said, unfortunately, I think with the advent of the Internet, it led to a problem where anybody felt like they could run a show or train. And there hasn't been a book like this out there that could actually tell guys the right way to do things.
Well, and let me just clarify that, too, because you're right to a point, but this curriculum came about really due to the fact that the powers that be wanted a curriculum, a one-year curriculum, and it's pretty difficult to put together a 1 year, this is how you do it, all included in one way to do things, because there's not just one way to do things. And that's when you become cookie cutter. So this curriculum came about because this is what the powers that be wanted when I was employed with the major company in the business. And when I had it, eventually they said, we're going a different direction. And so I said, okay, well, great. Now I've worked all this time on this curriculum. What do I do with it? Do I just leave it here, sitting here? No. I'm going to make something out of it. So I had the rules. I had the list. I had everything that's in there in my original curriculum. The only thing I added, I believe, is the forward and so you want to be a wrestler kid or something like that, and the final thoughts. So it's not the only way to learn, but it's one way to learn. So there's not just one way, and that's what a lot of people mistake. I think the Internet had a lot to do with it, but also just doing away with the commissions was a great idea, but a bad idea because anybody can run a show now. You don't have to be licensed. You can buy a ring from High Spots. You can set it up and in the backyard, charge tickets, don't charge tickets, put it on YouTube, whatever you want. And that's where I think you really got corrupted and pretty much just you infected it with all these guys who figured they're going to mimic what they see on Raw and SmackDown with no rhyme or reason as to why the guys are doing it that way. and not understanding what's being said to them once they come to the back. That's the other part of it. Real quick, and again, you guys might have to throw a flag on me here if I just get rambling and talking too much. You might have to cut me off.
Perfect.
But real quick, nobody understands, unless you've been there, what you do in the ring is really maybe 10% of what decides your success. If you show up at a building and you're there backstage, or you're at the building 9 hours, but you put in let's just say 10 minutes on TV. Well, where do you think the decision makers are going to make the decision? Do they, believe me when I say this, and I've told this to everyone who's ever come through the doors of developmental. As soon as you walk in that building, you're being watched, and you don't know who's watching. You don't know who's for lack of a better term, stooging or telling how you're acting, what you're doing. So you have to think of those things, and you have to understand that. You would think, oh, no, nobody's watching me. Oh, yeah, somebody is watching you. They're watching everybody because they want to see who might stand out, and they want to get a read for everybody that walks in their building, whether it's developmental or it's the arena that night. So while the Internet might have made it a little bit tougher to do things in other parts of the country and then duplicate them, in different territories, there are no territories anymore. So we have cable TV, we have the Internet, we have stuff that we can't go backwards. We have to go forwards. And whether I agree with it or not, whether I like the style or not, that doesn't matter. We're going to have 10-year-old kids that, in 10 years will have their own kids, or they'll have grown out of this and they'll have kids replacing them as fans. So that's kind of the way the WWE looks at it, and that's the way I have to look at it, as what are we doing to get the fans to come out and be involved or be interested in what you're doing. So I love old school wrestling, but that doesn't mean everybody else does.
Right, absolutely. Ronnie, you had a question?
Excuse me. Yeah, I with my trainers, Ghetto Superstar and Wade Daniels, they definitely had an old school way of training. Not only did they stretch me out and run me till I puked, but they kind of had me in there breaking down and setting up and everything. In your opinion, as far as paying dues, what do you think it is for somebody coming into the business on the indie level or developmental or whatever, the attitude they should hold when they come in and try to get noticed or just start training and dieting and exercise the whole nine as far as getting into wrestling?
Well, I could tell you, really, there's two stories that come to mind of how guys who I never thought should be in the business got in the business. And it was through perseverance and not taking no for an answer. And it was just, I have to tell you the story. First of all, sure. I believe if you want in this business, you should do anything and everything it takes, whatever it takes. And well, let me rephrase that, because I've heard there's some unscrupulous, unsavory things that people have been asked to do. Don't do anything morally wrong. I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is this: I've heard people tell me all the time, "I'll do anything to get in this business," and I tell them, look, there's three kinds of people: those that try, and when they don't make it, they say, "Well, you know what? At least I tried." Those that give it their best shot. And then when they don't make it, well, you know what? At least I give them my best shot. And then there's that third type of person who says, whatever it takes, I'm going to succeed. I'm going to make my goal. Titus O'Neil, for whatever you think of his talent, for whatever you think of what he's done, I saw him from day one when he walked through the door as I was teaching and training, and he had no business. It says right on the outside of the door, WWE, FCW personnel only. He ignored it and walked right in because he talked to Batista at the gym, and Dave told him, come on down, so he did. Well, I didn't have time for him, but I said, come back later that night and we'll talk to you. So he did. He's one of those guys who is confident. He grew up hard life, but he doesn't make any excuses. He's a Hall of Famer with Florida Gators. He's one story of a guy who had the charisma, the perseverance. He had no fear. He had confidence. Then you had guys who would give you a heartfelt story. And just there was something about him that you said, give this guy an opportunity. And this one guy, I'll just tell you this story as quick as I can. This one guy threw his heart out to the talent relations head at that time, and they hired this guy on the spot. Now, as goofy as he is, he ran for mayor in his hometown. He came in fourth, but there were only 4 people running. But he came in fourth, and he was proud of that. But he didn't say last. He said, I came in fourth, which I thought, okay. Yeah, and so he kept going, and then there was one night in a town where we had a great house. Dusty Rhodes is there. This is for FCW, and this guy just has ambition. This guy just has no fear. He just has this confidence about him. But he's horrible. I mean, he is horrible in the ring. He might be a great manager. He's a great mouthpiece, but he's horrible. And I mean that with all due respect. He knows he's horrible. But the point is, Dusty was there, and Dusty is very, very motivational at times, and during his promo classes he will motivate, and that's what leaders do. I tried to do the same thing. Well, I believe he talked to Dusty that night about going to I think it was Chicago. It was the go home week before WrestleMania. So where was that? Boston? No, Boston. I think it was Boston. It was the go home week before WrestleMania. He flies to Boston on his own dime and just shows up on the Monday Night Raw before WrestleMania, the biggest WrestleMania of the year now. We have Rock versus Cena. He shows up outside the head of talent relations door, and he doesn't let anybody know it. Or he let a couple of people know it, but they didn't let us know it. So we get a call from the talent relations person, and he wants to know what this guy is doing outside his door. And we're like befuddled. We don't know. Why isn't he in class? I marked him absent. He's in the afternoon class, so this is in the morning. We don't know where he's at yet. But it took balls to do that. He was escorted out of the building. We thought he was going to get fired. No, he didn't. He got praised. And then everybody started looking around saying, now, wait a minute. You're sending a mixed message here. Do we all take this upon ourselves to fly ourselves to Raw and get noticed, and that takes balls to do it? Yeah, it does. But, you're taking a big chance, taking a big gamble there. We had to talk with him in the office. He put us in a lot of hot water because we didn't know what was going on. Well, come to find out, actually somebody did know what was going on. He just didn't tell us. So that's kind of the way that works. As far as how to break in and how to pay dues and what to do and when to do it, not everybody is on the same level, and not everybody trains the same way. Not everybody teaches the same way. It doesn't make it right, doesn't make it wrong. But there are some steadfast rules. For instance, I just taught a camp. This is kind of what got me on a tirade about Rochester Independent Wrestling a couple weeks back. I did a camp in August, and these guys were hitting each other. Some guys are coming off the ropes on the right side with a tackle, and I'm looking at them and I'm going, "Wait, stop!" And I showed them how to do it, and they kept doing it. And it was different people from the same group doing the same mistakes, and they were grabbing a headlock, and then they would face each other in the headlock with their feet facing each other. And I said, wait a minute, the first thing anybody would teach is footwork and how to lock up, how to circle, and how to walk in the ring. You guys, you're telling me you've been wrestling 5 years, you're telling me you were wrestling 10. How does this work? I mean, who taught you this? And then nobody wanted to say anything, but then somebody spoke up, and I went on a rant because that's the kind of stuff that I detest when somebody gets in a ring and tries to tell somebody what to do. When there's rules, and yes, those rules are made to be bent and broken, and you can change, yes. But the way they were doing it was there's no way to change and work that. There was no way it could work the way they were doing it. So their excuse or their explanation, let me say this, was that they were told to mirror their opponent. I'd never heard that before, but I'm sure someone said that. doesn't make it, just because I haven't heard it, doesn't mean it's not done, not right. But in over 30 years of, now actually over 40 years of being around professional wrestling, I've never heard that. So I guess what I'm saying is, if you have a guy or a trainer that hasn't really been anywhere, hasn't really done anything, you have to question his credentials. Who does he know? Where has he been? Can he get you booked? And what's the benefits of training with him? Are you happy getting booked and doing what you're doing with him? If you are, great. There's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with having fun. There's nothing wrong with doing independent wrestling. The wrong comes in when you're doing it wrong and people get hurt. And what these guys were doing was getting hurt. They brought a 6'3", 275-pound guy with them to this camp. And he wrestled a smaller guy the night before for a TV show. Within the first 3 minutes of the match, this big 6'3", 275-pound man picked up the 5'7", 175-pound man and powerbombed him hard in the ring and pinned him. And the guy kicks out on 2.
What?
Yeah. And that's what I said. I stood at the table and said, what? So that show, and this guy said he had 18 years experience and was trained by Al Snow, which that was a bad thing to say to me because I know Al Snow. And, I mean, does he not think I'm not going to ask Al about him? Does he not think? I mean, well, obviously he didn't, but anyway. So that's the kind of stuff that kind of makes me think, if you're going somewhere and you want to do all the spots and they don't make sense, but you don't know they don't make sense because you're not sure what makes sense anyway, and you don't understand. When you first start out, you don't know. I didn't know. I've been watching wrestling my whole life. I thought I knew, but man, did they let me know how bad I didn't know. And I watched some early matches, man, and I sucked. So trust me, the rule of thumb was 5 years working every night. And working with different people every night and getting a good heel to call it for you and helping you. And eventually I got to the point where I could be a heel because that was more of what I was, more of what I am. And you have to be you have to be your true self, and it has to be inside you. And a lot of these guys are playing and pretending, and that's where it comes out. That's where it kind of goes. For me, just over the edge. But I understand, once again, if you're just doing it on the weekends, or you're just doing it to have fun, it's not your sole source of income, that's a different story. It's a whole different story. But that's part of paying your dues. If you really want to do this, even if you're doing it for the weekend, at least help with the setup. At least go out and help with the promotion. At least put some posters or flyers out. At least try and get some people in there to see you besides your family and friends. That's kind of how I feel about it. And again, doesn't make it right, doesn't make it wrong. It just makes it the way I feel. And some people don't feel that way, so I can understand.
That sounds like some great advice.
Yeah, I mean, why wouldn't you want to poster your town if you can? I know there's code enforcement, I get all that, but if you're going to run a town, you have to figure out advertising. I think newspaper is a waste of time. I think radio is a waste of time because people are going to change the channel. I understand you have a certain budget, but if you're going to do an independent show, you have to figure out what your budget is, and if you're going to pay your guys, which I believe you should pay your guys, you should pay your guys something, because if you don't pay them anything, you're going to get what you pay for. I promise you. And as a promoter or a trainer, whatever it may be, and this is one of the hardest things that I found in my experiences, you have to keep your word to your guys. If you tell them something, you have to keep your word. Now, when someone tells me something, I expect them to do it. So that's where I have a hard problem, or I have a hard time and a problem, I guess, when somebody doesn't keep their word. You know, we've had guys go out on street teams, 80 miles away to put up posters, and come to find out, all they did was throw the posters in the trash can, not knowing that we had somebody go right behind them the next day to see where the posters were put up. See, that's, that kind of stuff, it just, to me, is not only just lack of respect, but lack of intelligence, not understanding that, you're trying to outwork the workers, and that never works. So
I agree with you, and I think a lot of the things you had a quote that, I mean, and trust me, I know I sound borderline stalkerish, but I'm telling you, I'm a guy that's in this business that would rather turn on a tape from the 80s and learn rather than the current product. It's nothing against the guys who work with the current product. It's just I'm an old school guy who was taught old school, and I just feel like that. I know the product's changed. I know the match style's changed, but I feel like you can learn a lot of good things. I've now become more of the Booker/writing type style now, where I'm at now. So I follow you closely. I read all your blogs, and I learn a lot. A lot of the things you say just really, I mean, it means a lot, and I wish guys had the mindset that you do. You say don't mistake a pop with being over, and I think that's such a phenomenal statement because guys go out there, they may do something that works at that time, the crowd reacts to, and they immediately think that they're over, and I can't agree with you more on that statement.
Yeah, that's one of the biggest things that I hear I haven't been around that many independents. I'm slowly but surely getting sucked right back in, and I'm fighting it every way. But that's one of the things that the guys mistake for being over is you get this reaction, you get this pop. Oh man, I'm over. No. You just did something to get a reaction, and which is good. But the thing is, you have to know the difference, and nobody really understands the difference because it's name against name on Raw and SmackDown these days. There is no get over matches. Occasionally with Ryback there was recently, but nobody understands the difference. Ryback they were getting him over. He's still getting over. He's in that. To me, I think he's in that stuck stage. He's in a stage of, okay, now we've done the two guys. Now we're trying it with one guy. We're getting you over, but there's a hump he still needs to get over, in my opinion. I like Ryback. I think he's a great guy. He's gone through a lot of adversity too, and overcome a lot of adversity. But what irks me is when the first match goes out and blows all these high spots. And here you go, man. Oh my God, I got over. Did you hear those pops? And the second match goes out and does all the high spots again. And wow, did you hear me? I got over all those pops. And I'm not hearing anything, but in their mind they are. It goes back to less is more, and telling a story and building the mat and building the card. So that's how you have to book your cards and write your cards to build for the main event. I just did a show in Knoxville, Boomsday, for Next Level Wrestling. And it was supposed to be a TV pilot. We taped TV there. Just the logistics of it wouldn't work out. It was an outside show, fireworks at the end. You had over 400,000 people on the river, and it looked great. But at the same time, logistically, it was a nightmare. You know, outside, rain, things like that. But the guys would go out, and somebody wanted to do a promo, an interview, and I said, no, we're saving that for the last match. I want you guys to understand that the last match is a street fight, so don't go outside the ring. Tell a story inside. Get over inside. Get over by working. Show me something. Well,
show some talent.
Huh?
Show some talent in the ring. Show people how you can tell a story inside the ring. I agree.
Yeah. Otherwise, to get cheap heat at an outside show, number one, they're not going to hear it. Number two is cheap heat, and it doesn't always work, especially if you don't know how to do it. And I didn't have confidence this guy knew how to do it. Plus, he proved me right because right in the middle of the match, he puts on a figure four. This guy is a heel and puts on a figure four on the babyface. Now, I don't know about you guys, but when was the last time that you can remember anybody beat anybody with a figure four? I can't remember. So, and I told him that. And eventually he had the guy reverse it, and he went to the ropes, and the people cheered, yay. But it was just it meant nothing. But the way I describe it is a Jim Cornette quote real quick. Mm-hmm. If you see two elephants when you walk into the building, and they're, let's say, for lack of a better word, fornicating, Okay?
Sure.
And
Sure.
you walk in the building, you say, well, man, did you see those elephants out there? Did you see what they were doing? And then you come back the next day, and those elephants are still out there, and you walk in and you say, whoa, man, those elephants they're still out there. And by the third day, there's those friggin' elephants. It's like the same thing with the first match. Whoa, did you see what they did? Wow, that was great. Second match, wow, look what they did. Third match, oh, they're doing the same shit. So,
that's a great point. I totally agree.
Yeah, and that's where nobody knows how to be different because everybody doesn't understand. Mm-hmm. The old school way was this. You had to go to a town every week, so you had to change up your matches. You had to be creative. You had to have new angles. That's why bookers didn't last but maybe a year, 2 years, maybe 3. Gary Hart stayed the longest, I think. But that was the deal. You brought in your crew. Maybe you brought in a different guy now and then, but that's the way it worked, and you had enough places to go to you could make money. These days, the business and the dynamics have changed. You have the internet, you have the games, you have every social media available to you. Guys don't understand when they go on Twitter or Facebook, which I never wanted to do, and now that I'm on it, I'm learning how to use it to my advantage because I know. And I'll go ahead and say it publicly. I know if I write something about play wrestlers or independent wrestling or something, it's going to irritate and hurt their feelings so bad, I'm going to get a reaction. And I have. I've already got man, it was so great because the one I wrote about the Rochester guys, and I called them all out by name, I expected, okay, they may read it, they get mad or whatever. Well, great, cool, let's do a camp, let's get something out of it, kids. But don't take it personally, but at the same time, take it personally because you don't know what you're talking about. So I understand I'm going to get a reaction, so I'm going to use it to my advantage. What they don't understand is they're playing right into my hands. And they can use that if they really knew how to use that to their advantage and say, listen, maybe we don't know, but maybe we do. Why don't you show us what we don't know, and we'll show you what we do know. And let's just see if it works better. Let's see let's see how it works. And I offered him that. I said, look, I actually called the guy because he texted me or he actually emailed me and says, we need to talk. I said, okay, you send me your number, and I'll call you. Because I ain't giving him my number. And I called him, and we talked. And I gave him exact reasons why I wrote and said what I said. And he said, okay, maybe we can do something to change it. And I told him, Tiger Smith, by the way, the best way to change it is to change it. You be the change. You go ahead and you start that revolution in Rochester, New York, and start changing. Show everybody. But I haven't got any response or anything else after that. But I understand. Everybody wants to be a star. I understand it's fun. I understand you want to be in a ring. But if you're going to do that, do it safely. Try and do it right, and try and do it better than just going out there and not knowing why you're doing something. At least try and be entertaining and tell a story, but nobody understands what tell a story means. Nobody understands how to build for a match. Nobody understands you have a first, second, third, fourth, fifth, and you have a main event for a reason. They're supposed to build to something. At least that's the way it used to be. You can't judge what happens on TV and try and run a house show or an independent show off that, because what you're watching on Monday and Friday nights are television shows. What you're trying to do at a armory or high school or recreation center, wherever you run, is a live event. And it's different than doing a TV. It is and it isn't, but it is. In the independent world, you have to keep the show flowing. I hate shows where there's 15 matches and things like that where nobody understands. I mean, you run a 3-4 hour show, it doesn't work.
Right.
Throw a flag on me, guys. I'm sorry.
No, you're perfect. No, seriously, I could listen to you talk for hours. So this is one of those shows where as long as you'll talk, I'll listen, and I'm sure Ronnie feels the same way. But I know
absolutely.
Yeah, so we do have a caller that wants in. I have Dallas in Georgia. Dallas, you're on Hype is Wrestling. What you got, sir?
I'm Dallas in Florida, sorry, and I actually just had a couple questions for the doc. Number one, three greatest of all time, not technical, not entertainment. I want to hear the three greatest of all time.
Oh, for my opinion?
Yes.
Let's see. I'm going to go with Terry Funk, just because he was so innovative.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, I believe Terry was one of the most innovative, creative guys ever in this business. Gosh, I know everybody says Ric Flair. I would say Rick, just for the longevity and just for the fact that he has hung on for so long. The three greatest of all time is kind of, that's a real objective question, I guess, or subjective question, better yet. I think, you know what, I'm even going to go on record saying Roddy Piper and Johnny Valentine. I know that's four, but Johnny Valentine.
I've heard Johnny Valentine's name in a while.
Exactly, because there's not a lot of video on him, but Johnny Valentine and Roddy Piper, and I have to say Rick just by default. But if I'm going to say the three greatest of all time, I don't think I can just say three, but Terry Funk, Piper, Valentine, Flair. If you want to keep going,
I do appreciate the fact that I'm not one of the only people in the world that thinks Funk is just the man. Now here's more of a serious topic. Okay, everybody knows there's a difference between doing TV and doing not TV. You know, it's a completely different world. It's less format, less strict. Now, what is your opinion on selfishness in indie wrestling? Not on TV. Your opinion on basically the indie guys that are selfish and realize that if they go out there and they blow their load on the first match, you know, then they're going to be the guy at the end of the show that, I want to sign the autograph for the little 6-year-old. What's your opinion on that selfishness?
Well, first of all, it is a selfish business, but you have to know when to be selfish. And it's also about timing. So people like that I have no use for if they can't follow direction. If I'm booking a show and I don't want you to do all your stuff on the first match, and I know you can do it, show me what you can do by following direction. That's how I feel about it. Whoever's booking the show, that's his job, to run the show. And even though you had this guy in the first match that was so great, and he's such a great talker, and I just went through this, honest to goodness, this is a great question, because I just went through this. And I explained, if you are such a great talker and such a great worker, show me without talking and just tell me a story in the ring. Why don't you get over and do it the way I'm asking you to do it? If you have to do all your stuff to get over, then you're not that great because you're a one-trick pony. Show me that you can tell a story. And then you'll prove to me that, okay, maybe you can, maybe put you up somewhere else next time. If it's not a regular
show. And I feel the same way. You know, I see a lot of guys these days, like especially around the Florida area. There's a lot of guys now who go out there and they think, if I just take what I want, then I'm gonna become the next John Cena or Shawn Michaels, et cetera, and they don't realize that those guys got there because they sat back and they busted their ass, by going out there and working, the 3-minute job spot to Angle or the 5-minute job spot to the Rock and Roll Express in the 80s. You know what I mean? Those guys have busted their ass and I try to harp on everybody about that, and it seems like nobody these days thinks that, hey, let me do my 5-minute job and earn the spot where I can get some promo time, where I can get, a little offense. Nobody wants to earn shit anymore.
No, they don't, because they don't understand it. They haven't been through it. They haven't seen it up close and personal. All they've seen is Raw and SmackDown, and they think that's the way to get over. They don't understand. They don't have a database to go back to and say, oh, yeah, man, this is how it worked. I mean, again, growing up, I got to go to the matches every night, or not every night, every Friday night. And at the same time, that's what these guys don't get to see. They don't get to see a weekly show. They see a weekly TV show, but if they don't get to see great workers tell great stories, and understand what that means. Raw and SmackDown are not geared for live events. They're geared for television, and they're telling television stories geared for their pay-per-views, which, again, is a whole different animal. So on the independent world, when a guy thinks, well, I'm going to do this to get over and get WWE, I've always told everybody who's ever asked, who's ever wanted to send a DVD, the best thing you can do is show me that you know how to tell a story. And if you're the heel or the babyface, it does not matter. I'm not concerned with how many spots, how many Coronas or toupees you can do. It doesn't make a difference because I can't pronounce them anyway. I know they're Coronas or Hurricanes or whatever they are. I don't care. The point is, we've seen it. We've done that. What's going to get you noticed is how you can tell a story by doing the less. Less is more, and people don't understand that because they think more is more. I mean, I know it's really contradictory, and more is more, but at the same time, if we see a guy that can go out there and has a look and has something that it factor is something that grabs you, we can mold you, we can help you, and then see what you have and add that into what we want. And trust me. It's when I say we, I'm talking about WWE. I'm no longer associated. Let's just talk about WWE or any of the major companies. You're going to have to follow the rules, and they're meant to be broken and they're meant to be bent. Yeah. But until you've earned that right, you need to do what the booker or the owner or whoever it may be in charge asks you or tells you to do. Because if you want to go into business for yourself in any major company, that's the best way to lose your job. And and the independents should be no different, but they are because you have guys who don't know how to run the show. Too many booker friends.
There's too many bookers and friends at the same time. There's not a separation of personal and professional. There's too many guys that are trying to be buddy-buddy with everybody, having 3 or 4 hour phone conversations at the end of the night, to which in turn turns out to be, okay, well, you can't work your way out of a wet paper fucking bag, and now you're a heavyweight champion.
Right, exactly. I mean, you're right, and that's the part that's killing. To me, I don't know if it's killing it, but it's just not helping anybody out there at all. Nobody understands what the mindset should be or needs to be, in my opinion. And
it's turning people away from indie wrestling, which is in turn taking away from the opportunities for guys to be seen.
100%, I agree. And you have to have. I'm sorry. You have to have someone who understands that running the show. You have to have someone who understands the separation of you're my friend, but if you're going to work for me, it's got to be business. We can't mix the two. You cannot mix the two. One of the great things about Vince McMahon is he never, and I mean, I've seen it, and people can say whatever they want, but he has always been the hardest on Stephanie and Shane. And I'm pretty sure he's being pretty sure he's hard on Triple H right now too. But the thing about Hunter is he does have a good head on his shoulders. I have nothing negative to say about the guy. He really is an old school guy. He wants it to get back to where it was, but he has to prove himself right now too. And the lack of talent out there. I mean, the talent pool isn't that deep. So on the independent scene, honest to goodness, I read something where I think, I don't remember who said it. Maybe Mike Bennett said that WWE's looking at Ring of Honor. WWE looks at everybody, but they're kind of swaying away from independent wrestling for the reasons you just talked about. Too many guys going out there trying to get their stuff in, trying to show us what they can do. I'm sorry, WWE can do. And they go in there, they send all this stuff, and it just kind of gets tossed after the first 2 minutes of watching it, saying, no, we've seen it. It's a one-trick pony. You don't want that. You don't want that. So I agree. You need to have a guy who's going to be the booker, not a friend. A guy who, it's easy to say yes. The hard thing to do is say no. You're going to hurt some feelings. You might lose some feelings. You might lose some people, which might be good. But that's what it's going to have to take. You can't say, this guy's my buddy or he's my brother-in-law or whatever. Well, that's where you're going to run into big, big problems. So I agree.
Well, I appreciate your time. Thank you very much.
Take care, buddy. Thanks for calling in, man. Ronnie, you had a question for Dr. Tom?
I was going to ask, as far as the whole quote-unquote getting over, I guess in my personal opinion, I think it's kind of equally as important to get over with the promoter, of course, the crowd, and your fellow workers, because, they're the ones, without them, you can't really just do what I like to tell Adam all the time, wrestle the broomstick. But you kind of function off each other to make each other look good.
Right. Well, here's the deal, and I'm just about I'm gonna go ahead and contradict myself. Years ago, we asked my partner and I were in Tennessee. I was wrestling with Pat Rose in Tennessee, and Pat, we rode with the booker Bill Dundee that night, and Pat asked Bill straight out, "What do you have to do to get a break?" And Bill said, "First of all, you have to have somebody like you." And Pat looked at Bill and said, "You like us, right?" And Bill shook his head, "No, I don't." I mean, as friends, as guys that maybe hang out with, maybe we're nice guys and everything else, but as far as putting us anywhere near the top or putting us anywhere in a money-making position, no. But yeah, it's a process. You don't just come in and immediately think you belong. You have to work your way up, and it's kind of like this, in a simple as I can make it. You come in and you give respect, then you earn respect, and you'll get respect. So the same thing, if you come in and you show what you can do and you see that your work ethic is there. Let me use Titus O'Neil again as an example, because Titus was horrible. Titus was terrible. Titus was hurting people. But Titus is driven. Titus is a self-made man. Titus grew up at the Sheriff's Boys Ranch in Florida, which I'm sure you guys are familiar with. So he wasn't going to just step back and say, "Go ahead, and don't notice me, I'll just be over here." He made himself noticeable. He was at the ring every day at TVs when he showed up. He was the first one there, the last one out. Sure, it got annoying sometimes. Sure, he just kind of butted his way in at times, and sometimes he rubbed him wrong. We had to tell him Titus back off a little bit. But that's where the mentorship comes in. That's where the coaching comes in. That's where the help comes in. You need to have good people around you to help you get where you want to be. Now, on the independent scene, you do have to get over with the promoter and the booker to want you to be there. And that's a real touchy, tricky thing to do. It's a balancing act. It's a balancing act in the major companies, because this is the entertainment business. And you talk about any form of entertainment, from the movies, whatever. You talk about backstabbing, politics, man. I'm not going to sit here and tell you there's not politics. Of course there are. There's politics in life. But you can't hang your hat on it. You have to know how to play the game, and you have to make it seem like you're playing by their rules while secretly playing by yours, and doing what you want to do, but make it seem like it's what they want you to do. I mean, it is such a work. It's more of a work backstage than it is in the ring. And we tell these guys that all the time. But you don't really catch on to that until you're caught right in the middle of a hurricane and there's nowhere to run, and next thing you know, you're out of there. So it really is. It's a tricky proposition to get the booker to like you and want to book you in the spot you want to be in. So how do you do that? Everybody has their ways. And the guy that went to Boston, flew up on his own dime, he is still employed, and they think he's got a really good future ahead of him. He's yet to make a debut. He's still in developmental. But he's one of those guys that just will not go away. So I mean, really, honest to goodness, what it takes is perseverance, belief in yourself, confidence, and knowing that this is a game and how to play it, knowing that there's others trying to play the same game you are. If you don't think Shawn Michaels or the Click or Triple H or Kevin Nash and those guys know what they're doing, you're wrong, because they do, and they did. And they knew how to manipulate better than anybody in the business. And you have to give them credit for that, because when you had guys like Stone Cold Steve Austin, who was, Stone Cold was the man, and The Rock was the man. And you know that it ate at Shawn, it ate at Hunter. But they worked their way to work with them eventually, because they knew it's better to be working with them than to be over here working with somebody else, because that's where the money was at. But trust me, Bret Hart and Shawn Michaels, the animosity was so thick, and that was so real because Brett's pride, Sean's ego, Brett's ego, Sean's pride. I mean, back and forth. It was surreal to watch it. At the same time, it was all too real because you knew, you just, for us, we knew you could cut the tension with a knife. It was so thick.
Sure. Mr. Prichard, we got a caller here I want to go ahead and go to real quick. This is Russ in Jacksonville. Russ, are you there, sir?
Sure am, man. Okay.
What you got for us, Russ?
Okay, hey, Dr. Tom, how's it going, man?
It is going great.
Glad to hear. I met you back in the Ocala Dory Funk Jr. show February 04, and I reunited with you earlier back in March, Lake City with a bunch of friends of mine. Great to see you again, legend. Got a question.
Cool, man. Are you still with Dory or no?
I've been trying to find myself a regular job and stuff like that, you know how the economy is. Question for you, if you don't mind. Yeah. What was Gordon Soley like? Your fondest memory of Gordon Soley?
Gordon was a great guy. I met Gordon in Georgia when I first my first years in business. I think it was 81, 82. Man, everybody. I guess you're asking because you know about Gordon, right? You obviously are familiar with Gordon's work and his just his style, his talk.
Dr. Tom, let me tell you something about Russ. Russ is a super fan. Let me tell you, he comes out and supports us at independent shows. I see him in the crowd all the time. He is a guy that enjoys this business. He's just a complete. I mean, he is a fan. So he follows all the older stuff. So he loves anything that has to do with anything 70s, 80s. He watches it.
Perfect. I am too. I'm still a fan, but I got to tell you, Gordon Soley was one of the greatest men in the business to me. He was one of the boys, and he was to me. That you can say what you want. JR was a great announcer. Is a great announcer. I just thought for the time, the era, Gordon Soley was the right guy to be on Georgia Championship Wrestling. He was the right guy for Tampa. He was the right guy for Alabama. He was the right guy wherever he went. He just added credibility just with his mannerisms, his voice, his Gordonisms, whatever it was, the Crimson Mask and things like that. He was always just a great guy to me, and I got the chance to see him. I guess a year before he died, and he wasn't doing very well, but he was still that guy. He was still the guy that I remembered as a legendary announcer. But the great thing about Gordon, you can listen to him. He was also he was a fan. He was a fan of the business. He was a fan of the boys. He was a fan of being there, and he loved what he did. So I appreciate anybody that loves the business. I do. I appreciate anybody that cares enough to try it and go to Dory's school and have to work that way. And it's something again that's lost on everyone who doesn't know what that era was about. And what that era was about was, I just wrote a blog today about Jerry Lawler. What's missing today is that mystery, keeping secrets, and not telling everybody what your next move is. That, to me, was a great part about wrestling, is people may have thought what they thought. At the same time, they might have seen something that put an element of doubt in their head. And that's what made me a fan. When I watched guys like Dory Funk Sr., the Old Man Funk, and Terry Funk actually hit Mike DiBiase or the Lawman, Don Slatton, in the eye. I mean, or Harley Race, in the eye. I mean, legitimately hard way each other for the benefit of the fans, because they wanted people to believe. That made me a believer. I mean, everybody would tell me, "Oh man, that's fake," and that's just how can you believe that stuff? Well, I grew up in West Texas, and I went to East Texas and saw Johnny Valentine and Wahoo McDaniel and the Funks and the guys, Professor Boris Malenko. The first time Wahoo knocked Malenko's dentures out of his mouth and then smashed him in the mat. That was incredible because that wasn't supposed to happen.
Right.
Well, come to find out, they had done the same angle in Florida years before. That's where they got it from. Well, nobody knew that back then because you didn't have the Internet. You didn't have so much knowledge going back and forth on dirt and whatever. But they repeated stuff in territories. And when guys threw fire, I mean, there were actual burn marks on the guys. Okay, they used sandpaper. But think about that, man. Think how dedicated you are to your sport or to your profession. It's a work, but it's not because this is what you. And you have to believe it's not. You have to believe it's real. Because if you don't believe it's real, nobody else is. And that to me is the biggest thing missing these days. So once again, I appreciate anyone being a fan. Gordon was a great guy. Gordon was a fan of being around the business. Gordon was a fan of the guys in the business, and he tried to make it as real for them just as much as he did for the fans. The interview I did after the hanging angle was just with the way Gordon deadpans at the end and said, "I wouldn't be far and be the dirty white boy for $1 million." To me, I remember that. Yeah. I looked back on it and then watched it with Dusty Rhodes here, and he mentioned, he said, Gordon was the best, and he was. He could get stuff over.
Right. Hey, Doc, I got one more question, if you don't mind.
Yeah, go ahead, buddy.
I'd like to say, Dr. Tom, I've been a fan of you from Southwest Georgia, Memphis, everywhere you've been, man. You deserve to be in the Hall of Fame. One other question. What was Bob Cottle like? I remember you and Stan Lane and Cornette and Smoky Mountain. What was Bob Cottle like? I always enjoyed Bob.
Yeah, I enjoyed Bob too. Bob was a funny guy. Bob was a great guy. I never had any issues with Bob. So I mean, it doesn't mean like Gordon I had social time with. Bob I didn't have any social time with, so to speak. But every time I saw him at the matches, he was a very, very nice man, and I appreciate those guys too, because some announcers weren't so nice. Some announcers were almost condescending and things like that. But Bob wasn't. Just he was a very, very nice man. That's about all I can say. Gordon I know a little more about because again I was with him in social settings too. So very, very good. Yeah.
Well, Doc, I appreciate your time. You're definitely a legend, man. And Adam, thanks for letting me talk to the legend right here. And Dr. Tom, hopefully I'll get a chance to see you again, my friend. You're definitely a legend and definitely a Hall of Famer, my friend.
Well, I do appreciate that. I don't know if I agree with everything, but I appreciate all those kind words. Very nice. Thank you.
And Russ, we will see you at a USWA and Pro Wrestling Rage here in Jacksonville, Florida here in the next few weeks, sir. Take care, buddy.
Sounds good, man. Thank you, Adam. Thank you, Dr. Tom. Appreciate it, guys.
Thanks.
One thing I did want to talk to you about, working into your career, man, I think that one of the most underrated angles was you and the Dirty White Boy, and that hanging angle, man. It was so far ahead of its time. Who was that? Who actually booked that and came up with it? And what was the original reaction to that? I want you to discuss that because a lot of people, believe it or not, whenever my main, I don't know, I guess when I originally started on the independents, I worked for an organization called Continental Championship Wrestling with a guy named Chris Turner. He helped me out a lot in this business, and CCW, he originally showed me that angle because, it was one of those things that was way ahead of its time. What exactly was the story behind that?
Well, here's where the story is, because it gets kind of muddled in there and people don't really know where it came from, but here's the true story. Once again, growing up in El Paso, I got to see some great, great wrestlers. They had a guy named the Hangman, and he came to the ring with a noose, an actual noose, and he didn't wear a mask or anything, but they called him the Hangman. And one night or one day on afternoon wrestling, I don't remember what he did, but Nick Bockwinkel actually came to the ring and started fighting the Hangman, and eventually Bockwinkel, the Hangman kept his noose on the corner. He nailed Bockwinkel, went down and got this noose and put it around Nick's neck and started beeling him from corner to corner, and then he threw him over the top rope and hanging him with this noose. And I just remember that as a kid, and I'm thinking, oh my gosh, he's killing him. I mean, Nick is turning blue, he's holding his breath, and it's just, it was pretty violent for the time, I guess. Anyway, and Tony and I had been working for a while. We just had we had chemistry. In any match, anyway. Well, we started thinking. Kim came into the picture, and we wanted. I think I had the Alabama title at that time, and we were trying to figure out something to prolong the angle. And believe me, we weren't doing stellar business at that time. This was around the time Eddie Gilbert had taken over, and David Woods had, I think, taken over, and Robert was on his way out or already on his way out. Right. And so it was kind of up to Tony and I sitting around talking, and we talked about, well, how should we drop the belt? And we came up with the street fight, and I said, let's use Kim. Put the ether, knock me out, beat me. And then the next week I was going to cut his hair. And after that, we came up with, went to Eddie and said, how about this? Because I remembered the visual of the hangman. I remembered it. And I said, what about something where Tony hangs me with a noose and I'm just frigging out there and you have to go off the air or whatever. He says, no, man, we need something more. So, okay, how about this? How about he nails me from the interview stand, which is at the fairgrounds, and if you watch it, I watched it, oh, God, it was about a year ago, I guess. I watched it with Dusty Rhodes. That's where he started making comments. But there's a cop just standing there watching, which really took away from the realism, because if you're trying to kill somebody, why wouldn't that cop stop him? Anyway, I was wrestling, but... Yeah. But anyway, so I said, well, what if he handcuffs my hands behind my back and then drags me from the interview stand to the ring, and then he's sitting there and chokes the living shit out of me. And Eddie said, now we got something. So I believe Eddie's idea was for Kim to come up with the makeup and con me to come on, and Tony nails me from behind. Beforehand, by the way, Randy Colley, and this is something I never did, and it doesn't even show on TV, but I'll tell you a little backstory behind this. Sure. Randy Colley drew blood from my arm and put it in a condom. Yes, we carried condoms back then. Put it in a condom, and I was going to put it in my mouth. The referee puts it in my mouth as he comes out to check on me after Tony nails me into the set and knocks it down. The referee puts it in my mouth. Now I have this blood-filled rubber in my mouth, and it's not tight. So when I go to bite it, it doesn't bust. But I think Steve Armstrong, Tracy Smothers, whoever came out, somebody had a blade, tried to pop it. They finally popped it, but the blood never shows on TV. You can't see it. So it was all for nothing. But it was just, trying to make it as violent and trying to make it just as crazy as we could. I never heard at the time that we almost lost TV. We probably did, might have, but it was just one of those things that, and believe me, when he was choking me, I was choking. I mean, there was no way to stop it because he had to drag me. He's doing his best to protect me, but once we got there, my hands, the noose already tightened up. And my hands were behind my back. I couldn't do anything, and I was doing the best I could just to hold my breath. But I mean, that was part of the thing that I wanted to do. Knew it was going to be. If we were going to do it, we're going to do it, and it had to be real. So if he's going to kill me, go ahead and kill me. So I told him, I said, if you kill me, go ahead and kill me, man. I'm pretty much done. And anyway, here comes the guys to save me, and that's, afterwards we did the promos that night, and I thought about it, but I didn't really think about what I was going to say, and it just was one of those things where you have to put yourself in a position of what did we just go through? You beat me for the title. This girl, she used the ether. And I came out the next week and I hit you with a board and I cut your hair and now she's mad and you're mad at her and you beat her up and, all it was just a ruse to get me out here and, okay, now it's on. But I wish I could say we went around the territory and did stellar business, but really, no, we didn't. So it would have been a great angle if we made money off it, but quite honestly, it's just one of those things.
Yeah, it came across so ahead of his time on TV, and it was just an amazing angle to watch. Ronnie, you had a question?
Yeah, I want to first let out a little comment. Back in the day, I as a kid, I was always, a fan of yours and Bret Hart and guys like that. And I earlier today, I watched a match of you and Bret, and I see how you guys were so technical. I mean, you had this phenomenal old school style that is great. I mean, the crowd's behind you and everything. You really told a story and had great psychology, and I really enjoyed that match. And then I go back and I look, I think it was late 80s, early 90s that you had some sort of faction with you, Eric Embry, and Steve Austin, and, working with guys like Jarrett and Dundee and all those guys. What was it like, because that's a lot of different wrestling styles right there, what was it like being able to get in with these different guys in different styles and being able to tell the same stories?
That was the art form back then. That's really how you learned, and honestly, it was going to the different places, working with different guys like that's how you learned. And actually, that match with Bret is the only time I ever worked with him. So that was really cool to be able to work with a guy like Bret Hart, because we were pretty much around the same age and started out, about the same time, but he was obviously a little earlier than me. But it was great because you could go to Memphis, and Memphis had a different way of doing things, as did Louisiana, as did Portland or Calgary or anything like that. But you had to adapt or be different. And at that time, I think in Memphis, and that was before WWE, Bret was more of a technical guy. Bret was never a high flyer. I was never really a high flyer. I never. I wanted to just go out and protect the guy and protect myself and try and have a good match. So no matter who I was working with, I worked with some crowbars and worked with some guys who didn't get it, but maybe they thought I didn't get it. So I mean, we're okay. You don't get it? No, you don't get it. Well, all right. Let's just agree to disagree. But I had a chemistry with Jeff Jarrett at the time in Memphis, and I had a chemistry with, how could you not have chemistry with Bill Dundee or Lawler? Both were stiff. Let me say they were solid, but Lawler would, and definitely he could throw a hell of a punch and barely touch you. Dundee would throw a punch and just knock your head off, but you had to expect that. That's the way they did it. I watched some old Memphis stuff recently. You ever heard of George Barnes? Bill Dundee came to the States with him. That was Bill's first tag team partner in Tennessee. And then George couldn't take it. So George left, but then George came back, and they did this angle. I just recently watched that, and I'm watching these matches between George Barnes and Bill Dundee. And then I'm watching matches between Lawler and Bill Dundee. And for all the knocks that Memphis got, and believe me, they're all deserved, Dundee and Lawler had some of the greatest matches ever, because they went out and they told a story, they laid their stuff in, they had timing, they had chemistry, and that's what it takes. And that doesn't just happen overnight. I mean, sometimes you get in the ring with a guy and you can feel each other and it's right. You can kind of anticipate his move, or you kind of get a feeling when he's coming and when he's not. When he's coming at you, let me say that. That's what Dundee and Lawler had. And I had that with Jeff. I had that with a few people. Tony was another one. When we were with Eric Embry, it was a Texas versus Tennessee deal. I was just, again, happy to have a job. So the deal was you had to know how to adapt. And the WWE style at that time, it's like anything else, man. If you want to find fault with something, you can. But if they like you, everything you do is okay. John Cena is never going to be classified as one of the most technical wrestlers ever. He's not going to claim to be one of the most technical wrestlers ever. He doesn't have to be. All he has to do is what he's doing. That's where less is more comes in. A lot of people don't like it. A lot of people don't agree with it. It doesn't matter. He is over because that is the image they're projecting.
Right.
The greatest workers don't always get the greatest spots, and that's okay. You need spots like that. People go to the circus to see the lions, tigers, and bears, but you also have the dog acts, you have the warm-ups, you have stuff like that too. So you have to understand where your position is and what your spot is on the card. And even though you might be a better worker, and I believe this, Tyson Kidd is a tremendous worker. He's a great worker. He's a great athlete, man. But where is he fitting in? If he was a politician, if he was a better backstage worker, possibly. But he's one of those guys who just loves wrestling. He wants to just go and do his job. You know, Michael McGillicuddy, Johnny Curtis, guys you haven't seen in a long time. And they just come to my mind because I recently texted them and talked to them. Yeah. So, I mean, they're great. You have some great rookies and some great workers, but, you know, Dean Ambrose, where has Dean Ambrose been? Why isn't he on TV? Exactly. I ask these questions because then I look back and I know the personalities, and we've told them all the time, you don't know who's watching you. So I wish the time we could go back where it was just you got in the ring and wrestled and told a story like Brett and me or like back in Tennessee days, but it's not that time anymore.
All right.
So
I'll say this. We're running out of time, so we're going to start wrapping up. But one more question for you. I read where you poked and prodded Jerry Lawler as we are all praying for Jerry's recovery. You poked and prodded Jerry Lawler for the true story on the Andy Kaufman situation. Can you take us through that whole situation? Tell us how that happened, because I'm infatuated with that because I want to know how it turned out for you.
Okay, do we have to be done by 8:30?
We do have to be done by 8:30, yes, sir.
Hey, cool, man. I'll try to make it quick. Here's what happened, because I rode with Jerry maybe, I want to say a total of 6 times in my career, and that may be more or less. But it was Jimmy Del Rey, Jerry Lawler, and myself, and it was going to a WWE show, I believe. I had to be because that's the only time we'd be together, Del Rey and myself. And we started talking, and I've known Lawler, and I worked for Lawler, but, you know, I have talked to him over the years, but this is one of the times we're in the car and you're trying to make conversation. And I said, man, tell me about the night with Kaufman and Letterman. How did you guys work that? And he says, oh, man, come on, I don't want to talk about that. I said, no, come on. We've got 4 hours ahead of us. Just tell me, how did you guys come up with this? And he said, okay, look, here's what we did. Andy decided he wanted me to slap him as we go to break. Just stand up and slap him. And don't tell anybody. And the only guy that knew, I forget his agent's name, Zuckerman or whoever it is. It was just those 3 talking about it in the hotel or wherever it was. I believe it was in the hotel, and because it was Andy's idea. He said, as we go to break, I just want you to stand up and just slap the dog shit out of me, and we'll go from there. Well, Jerry told him. Jerry said, I told him. He said, Andy, if I do this, I'm going to knock your head off. He says, that's what I want. He said, I don't know what's going to happen after that. That may not even show. I mean, they may take us right off the air. I don't know. So Andy says, just do it. Just do it. So that's the greatest thing about Lawler. And I was there when the Kaufman angle, I got there when they were still doing it. Actually, it was Loser Leave Town, Dundee and Lawler. I was there. That was my first night there. They were still doing the Andy Kaufman angle. So it was so cool to see him in that setting because he was such a fan. But Lawler said they agreed to do it that night. They got to the show. They kayfabed everybody. They stayed away from everybody backstage. They kept it so right, just the way they should do it, with everybody on the Letterman staff. Came out, did the interview like you saw, and that was the first meeting they'd had, you know, at the building, so nobody, or at the studio, so nobody saw them converse or anything like that. And they actually caught Dave off guard. And he said Dave was really pissed about it afterwards, and they were really, really hot about it, and Andy had to apologize and tell him what was going on. But it was after the show aired. You know, it aired that night as you guys saw it. But the next day, Andy got a lot of heat over it, and he had to really make amends. And I think the next night also, Letterman went on and made a monologue about you know, he was part of a Saturday morning wrestling show. He didn't like it very much. But I think in the end he realized what he was trying to do. So that was kind of that's what happened. I mean, it was Andy's idea. Jerry didn't know if it was going to air or not. And then afterwards he said Paul Bosch, which is a guy that, you know, actually gave me my break, and Vern Gagne and all these big-time promoters sent him telegrams. Now, back then, again, it wasn't email and things like that. It was telegrams or calls, and said, thank God that you slapped that little punk. They weren't smart to it. They didn't know it was a work, which is so great. That's what he said. He said the great part about it is they didn't know it, and once I started getting these calls and telegrams, I couldn't smarten them up. It wouldn't have worked. It was better that they didn't know and they thought what they thought. It was better for everybody. And it was kind of cool to hear him tell me and listen to the real story, because Lawler was infamous for just keeping things real and not smartening anybody up unless you needed to be smartened up to something. And that's again, I go back to that's what's missing in the business, and I'll wrap it up real quick, I promise. But thinking of that, he that's why he is that go-to guy, and that's why when you put a guy like Jerry Lawler in there against the CM Punk, even at 62 years old, they're chanting his name. He didn't work like he was having a heart attack the other night. He's in there because people still believe in him. He's in there because he has that love and that passion for the business that's missing. He's in there because he wants to be, and he's in there because Vince and anybody in WWE know if Jerry Lawler gets in the ring, he's going to put 100, and I hate this saying, but 110% into it. He threw a drop kick. He did his fist drop. He did everything he does. Who would have known?
Yeah,
but
who would have known?
Yeah, it just goes to show you nobody knows, and that's the story. That's how he got booked, and he just slapped Andy Kaufman.
Yes,
wow.
And I agree, and I want to say one thing. I think my personality in the last 14, 15 years on the independents I see a lot of me in the way you talk and a lot of you act. Obviously, your successes and the things you've done, I could never equal that, but I can tell you I've taken more of an interest in working behind the scenes, and I'm intrigued by everything that you write, and I follow it because I find it good advice for somebody like me who would rather follow the old school methods and teach guys who are coming up that way. And I think there's a lot more for us to talk about. I would hope in the future that you would be willing to come back on and we could talk more about certain angles of certain parts of your career we could actually get into. But this has been an amazing interview for us. We really do appreciate you coming on today.
Anytime, guys. Just email me. Let me know when you want me to do it. We'll be glad to.
Absolutely. Ronnie, it's been a pleasure having Dr. Tom, right?
Oh, yes, sir. There was a lot of insightful information there. I had a blast. Maybe we can get you on again and talk about some road stories and matches all the way through, man. Thank you so much.
Yeah, I think the statute of limitations are out on some of those, so yeah, I'll probably talk some of that stuff. Especially in Alabama. Yeah. Very cool. Guys, thank you very much. I had a blast. Like I said, you're going to have to throw a flag on me next time so I don't talk so much.
No, dude, I promise you, I would let you ramble for 45 minutes. And when I say ramble, I mean that with all due respect. Everything you said meant something to me and everybody else listening. Thank you so much for your time, sir.
Yeah, very cool. Thank you, guys. I appreciate it. I'll do it again.
Absolutely.
Yes,
We're looking forward to having you on again. Have a good night.
You too.
Wow. So that was an amazing interview with Dr. Tom Prichard. As we wrap up here, we went a little over. I can tell you something, folks, that is a man we will have on again, folks. Just an amazing interview with Dr. Tom Prichard. Wow, Ronnie Stanley, what an amazing individual in this business.
I need to tell you, that guy there, he definitely knows what's going on. I mean, gosh, we didn't even get into talk too much about the, being the trainer and all, but man, that was awesome.
I'm going to tell you something. I mean, anytime you could, trust me, he says that we need to stop him from talking. I would never stop him from talking because I want to hear everything he has to say. Guys in this business make the mistake of not approaching veterans and asking them for their opinions, asking them for their feedback, and to me this is one big feedback session, and I promise you I'm going to make sure I get in touch with him and book him for the future, and we will have Dr. Tom Prichard Part 2 for you in the future. I definitely want your feedback. Anybody who called in, anybody who's listening, on download, whether it be live, make sure you like us. Hype is Wrestling, Hype is Here. Search us on Facebook, you'll find us. Again, we are available on Stitcher. If you want to listen on Stitcher. There's an app for that. Stitcher on iPad, iPhone, Android, Facebook. It's everywhere. It's even integrated in some cars. We are literally being heard this show over 400% more of an audience than we were last show. So it's very exciting, Ronnie.
Oh, yes, sir. That was awesome. I also want to say thank you to Marty for letting me know it was CM Punk and Ziggler. He was kind of feeding me stuff via Facebook, so thank you, sir.
Yes. And I, again, thank you for ProWrestlingExtra.com. They are one of the huge sponsors of this show. They support us hands-on everywhere we go. There they are, so they are huge for this show. Go to ProWrestlingExtra.com. I don't care where you're at. If you like independent wrestling, Florida is a hotbed for independent wrestling, going all the way back to the Gordon Tully days, Florida Championship Wrestling from Florida. ProWrestlingExtra.com shows you the best of independent wrestling all through Florida. Make sure you visit them. They're the main sponsor for this show, so I'm going to leave it at that. Hype is Radio will announce our next show. Again, we are still expecting Barry Darstow's Massive Demolition to do our show. We're just having a tough time getting with a time to have him on. But I promise you he will be on. We have other guests in the works. Trust me, folks, this show has hit a new level ever since we got with Stitcher. The Stitcher app has helped us out a lot. So, again, if you can, share the word of the hype. This show is going a lot of places. Ronnie, it has been a pleasure doing radio with you tonight, sir.
Absolutely. You as well, Adam. And please, everybody, go on. I know a lot of you have Twitter, @HypeIsRadio and @KidHollywood12. Follow us, talk to us. We will talk back. I promise.
Yes, absolutely. And one more thing, Ring Wars on Facebook. Make sure you like them, folks. I cannot tell you enough how much publicity they give this show and how many things I saw on there where I've read for the first time, folks. Ring Wars on Facebook. Make sure you like them. Ben over there does an excellent job, and pretty soon they've asked me to do an article for them, do a write-up. So as soon as time clears, I will be doing an article for them. Make sure you like Ring Wars on Facebook along with Hype is Here and Hype is Wrestling. So, with that being said, I am Adam MainMan Carey. Again, September 28th, USWA in North Florida, Jacksonville on Normandy Boulevard. If you're there, anywhere near us, you definitely want to go out and know a lot of people who will be there. Also, Pro Wrestling Rage, which is coming up as well. So there's a lot of shows you can go check out, the MainMan and Ronnie Kid Hollywood Stanley. So for what it's worth, make sure you go out and support us. Pro Wrestling Rage is October 26th. So with that being said, I am going to wrap up. Adam MainMan Carey, good evening, good night, good day. Thank you for listening to the Live on Download. We appreciate it. Ronnie, you have a good night.
You as well. Thank you, everybody, and have a good night.